how do I move from a me mentality to a we mentality? What does it look like for me to lead with other leaders? I hope those are some of the questions bouncing around your head. All of that at its core is basically impossible apart from the gospel. There's two ideas I want to leave you with. One is the idea of gospel distance, and one is the idea of gospel freedom. Gospel distance is completely necessary for great team leadership and great team ministry. And gospel distance comes from the fact that my identity is not in being a pastor, or is not in being a founder of Fellowship Memphis, is not in being a preacher. Ultimately, my foundation is the fact that I'm a child of God, that He loves me, that He's for me, that He came and lived a life I couldn't live, died a death I deserved, raised to defeat Satan, sin, and death. He has adopted me into His family. I am laboring and living, from approval, not for approval. That reminding of the gospel, that diving deep into the gospel, helps me create what I call a gospel distance now. Now, counselors would call it an enmeshment, when we're like, we are our job and our job is us, and typical American thing, like, hey, how are you? What do you do? Like that whole idolatry of work and gospel distance is that gospel distance from me as a pastor and me as a founder and me as a teammate is necessary, right? Because when critique comes in, when about that sermon I gave Sunday, when somebody pushes back on my idea, they're not pushing back at the core of who I am as a human or son of God. And so when there's not gospel distance, when all that is enmeshed, team can't work because you can't be confronted or challenged by a strong leader beside you, because that kind of sends you to a despondent place because you don't have gospel distance from your job. Works the same way, incidentally, in our marriages and in our parenting. There's got to be gospel distance where I'm a son of God, free to even critique myself. That leads to gospel freedom. That now I can welcome rebuke, I can welcome a pushback on my ideas, I can welcome a constructive criticism, I can defer to other people. That's what gospel freedom allows. Gospel freedom that comes from gospel distance allows me to acknowledge weakness. See, it's gospel freedom that allows me to go, I'm not very good at that, and I am awful at that. And there's guys 1,000 times better at me doing this, and this. And man, I'm 20 years in now of pastoral ministry, and I see more clearly every week, especially as I rub shoulders with guys who are great at things that I am maybe average, and guys great at things that I'm horrific at. And something comes alive when there's gospel distance and gospel freedom to go, boy, I want a person like that doing those things around me. And so you're almost on a trajectory of just going, boy, there's only a couple things that I'm really, really good at. And boy, only the gospel gives you freedom to admit weakness.